Good evening, everyone out there in Facebook land. We're also live streaming right now on the Way 31 YouTube channel. Obviously, you should know why we're doing this. We've got a big weather event coming up for tomorrow. Hopefully you can all hear me, which means if you can and you can see me, I can see myself here on Facebook. It means I've got everything set up properly. But we're just going to keep this pretty casual. I want to talk a little bit about what our expectations are for this big winter storm that's barreling across the southern part of the U.S. It is going to impact us here in the Tennessee Valley. There's still some question marks about the impacts, particularly the degree and how much accumulation of snow and ice that we are going to see. And I hope to answer some of those questions for you and also give you an idea about what some of our limitations are with this forecast and why it's just not cut and dried. So let me get started here. And I know some people will join. And just a reminder as we go through this, hopefully I'll answer all your questions. But if you do have a question that I don't address here in the next few minutes as I kind of go through everything, make sure you put something in the comments. I'll check my page. I'll also check the Way 31 Facebook page as well to see if we have any questions that I can specifically answer that I don't cover here. All right, it is a 31 alert day for your Friday. We declared that a couple days ago. That was pretty much based on the forecast just going to happen, and here we are. We are expecting accumulating snow and ice across the Tennessee Valley. Again, the question is what will be the degree of that? How much snow, how much ice? And that, of course, will factor into what sort of impacts it's eventually going to have. Now, this does kick in overnight tonight. We do expect to see the beginnings of this winter storm in our area probably after midnight tonight. And we'll say approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, beginning to see some wintry precip develop across the area. And this will not taper off until sometime early to mid-evening on Friday. North Alabama, southern Middle Tennessee, all included in this winter weather threat. Let's see, looks like people can hear me, so that's always a good thing. All right, let me run through some of the graphics here, and we are going to take you through this forecast. And the first thing I'm going to show you future radar. Obviously, that's what you want to see. When's the snow coming on in? What is it going to look like when we transition to perhaps a little bit of a wintry mix? I'm going to show you a couple different models here. Already we're seeing that tricky part of the forecast out to the west. If you were watching our newscast a little bit earlier, I mentioned Dallas. Dallas is right on the edge between solidly frozen precip in Oklahoma and solidly rain as you head deeper into South Texas. Dallas today has reported at the airport there, DFW, they've reported snow. They've reported ice pellets, or that's essentially sleet that's being detected. They've reported freezing rain, and they've reported rain. So they've had it all. And I think we're going to see that in some parts of the Tennessee Valley. We're going to get it all before it is all said and done. Let me take you through this forecast. And this is just one of many pieces of data that we look at when we're trying to figure these things out. Sometimes, I'll be honest, I get data overload. We get multiple computer models that we can look at. They update multiple times a day. Sometimes the consistency is there in what the models are saying, and sometimes it's not. And that's really what makes it a challenge to try and figure out what the weather is going to do. When we show you all these models, just a little breakdown, a little background here. These are based on the math and the physics that describe how the atmosphere changes with time. They're not perfect because in a lot of ways we're approximating things. We also don't have a complete what we call an initial data set, which would be what is the weather situation at every single point everywhere across the planet at any given time. We don't know that. So there are inherently some errors that do show up, and that's why the forecast is never perfect. It can be good, but it's never absolutely perfect. And we really see that as a problem when it comes to forecasting winter weather here in the South. It is often a matter of degrees. And I'm going to show you that as we go along here, why this remains so tricky. But let's talk about this particular computer model. This is the one that we often show you on air. It's in-house. It's one that's produced by IBM, who owns the company that is our weather vendor, where we get all this data and this graphic ability from. So this is their own proprietary model, and it does pretty good. Does pretty good a lot of the times. But again, it's not 100% perfect. So here we go. This is after midnight tonight, 2 o'clock in the morning, starting to see some snow show up. Now, if you've checked out, say, your regional radar, it already kind of looks like it's precipitating here. It's not. That's just because that regional shot is taken by multiple radars. The clouds are actually producing some precipitation over our head right now, but as you get close to the ground, the air is extremely dry, so that precip is evaporating before it can make it down to the ground. That precip falling, though, as it does, gradually makes the air less dry. It moistens it up. And so at some point here in the coming hours, we're going to moisten up the lower atmosphere to the point that the precip will make it down to the ground. It appears, most of the data suggests that at the beginning, it'll be in the form of snowfall. And that's what this model is saying. Starting at around 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll begin to see that out in the northwest corner of the state. We'll move you forward in time here. I'll take you up to about 5 a.m. At this point, this says solidly snow across the area. This would be some light snow initially as we continue to moisten up the lower atmosphere and we really shut down any sort of evaporation. It is likely to get heavier, and that will also coincide with the main storm system getting a little bit closer to us. What we're watching, though, is the pink color. That's your wintry mix. 5 o'clock in the morning, it's already moving into parts of northwest Alabama near Haleyville. This is where we're going to start to warm the atmosphere just enough that instead of snow, just all snow, we start to get perhaps some sleet, depending on the lower profile of temperature in the atmosphere. If we melt the snowflakes, but it's still at or below 32 degrees at the surface, that's going to mean some freezing rain. Just a reminder, freezing rain is kind of like glaze. Sleet is kind of bouncy. So that's kind of the difference between the two. The mix indicates where we're starting to change over from strictly snowfall to that wintry mix. And again, this is going to be the big question. The amount of time that it stays snow is going to mean the difference between decent accumulation or not very much. And then keep in mind when we transition here to this wintry mix, if there's snow already on the ground, that's going to tend to kind of compact it a little bit. So the actual snow depth will go down with time as a result of this. All right, let's take you to 8 o'clock in the morning. Here we go. The blues here, still snow. Scottsboro, Huntsville, Athens, Decatur, Muscle Shoals. Look at what the pink has done, though. It's moved north, closer to the Tennessee River. So this is where we're going to start to transition from strictly snowfall to, again, that wintry mix with time. It's likely to be a wintry mix that includes some snow, some sleet, and again, some freezing rain mixed on in. Let me move you towards the lunch hour, and this is where things get even more interesting. Again, the far north is snow. So you folks in southern Middle Tennessee, I think you're fine. You're going to see snowfall. You're going to get the most of it because it's going to be snow probably throughout the duration. Again, we hit the lunch hour. The pink has crept a little bit more to the north into the Decatur, Athens, Huntsville area, perhaps close to Scottsboro. We've got that mix there showing up on this model, Guntersville to Fort Payne. And then even we got some green showing up down towards Coleman County, down around Gadsden. That's a transition to all liquid precipitation at that point. So even that gets this far north based on the current track and thermal profile of this weather maker. We hit 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The atmosphere will actually start to turn a little bit colder towards the end of the day. So although we may get this wintry mix that comes in and even some raindrops for areas south of the Tennessee River, we're eventually going to cool things back off. So for the most part, we are anticipating that the precip will wrap up as some snowfall. But at that point, it's tapering off, so we're not likely to get much in the way of additional accumulation. So again, that's one model. Let me show you another one. And this is where the dilemma comes on in. So this is another model. This one updates once an hour. And you talk about data overload. Every single hour when this model's been updating today, I've been looking at it to see what the latest is. All right, so this is the very latest that we have in on it. This particular model ran at 6 o'clock this evening, so this is relatively new data. Taking you into the evening hours. Now, it tries to start the precip a little early. I think this is probably a little bit overdone. It says by midnight, maybe some of this already coming down to the ground, but probably a little bit too quick on that. But you do see how it starts, primarily in the form of snowfall, a little bit of pink, and a little bit of rainfall. And I think the rain is overdone, as we're expecting temperatures will likely at the ground be at or below 32 degrees. So it won't be rain. If it's anything, it's the pink stuff, which could mean perhaps, depending on the thermal profile of the atmosphere, maybe a little freezing rain as well. But primarily for most of us, you're going to see as we take you through the overnight hours after midnight, you're mostly going to see the blue and the white showing up here. Again, there is that pink area, a little more aggressive with that than what the other model I showed you was indicating. Well, let's march you into the early morning hours, and you see that the mix kind of backs off. So at least early on in this model, not necessarily buying the details. Number one, I think the precip, it has it coming and reaching the ground way too early by a few hours. So let's start you off again Friday morning. This is around 6 a.m. Again, primarily snow. You head Coleman southward towards the Birmingham area. They're likely dealing with more of a wintry mix in that direction. But just like the other model I showed you with time, here we are, mid-morning, 10:30. Again, this is a little more aggressive, making that changeover to a wintry mix in the pink. That would be some sleet, maybe some freezing rain. Snow mostly stays confined here to southern Tennessee. And then look at that. We got just plain rainfall. Lower atmosphere, according to this model, warm enough that the precip will be all liquid in those areas by mid-morning. And this brings that liquid precip even farther north. This is around the lunch hour. This is saying Shoals, Athens, Decatur, Huntsville to Scottsboro, change over to all rainfall. If you're a snow lover, and regardless of how much snow we picked up prior to this changeover, some of that snow is going to start to go away if this model is correct. You can see basically that continues through tomorrow afternoon. 4 o'clock, primarily rainfall being indicated here, even showing some of that changeover to liquid in southern Middle Tennessee. So if this model is correct, I think a lot of you are going to be disappointed. You do see again, kind of towards the end, gets a little bit colder. We change some of this rain back over to at least a wintry mix before everything kind of heads out of here as we work our way on into the evening hours. One last thing here, and I'm going to get away from the model stuff, and then we're going to talk some actual numbers. And this is honestly what it comes down to. This is what the model says is going to happen in the lowest few thousand feet. This level here, 3 kilometers, we're approximately talking about between the surface, which is here, and what's happening between ground level and about 10,000 feet up in the air. And this is what we call model sounding. This is basically a look at the profile of the atmosphere, temperature, moisture in the atmosphere, and some other things as well that we'll look at. But primarily when we're talking winter weather, we're looking, okay, what's the temperature forecast to do? And here's where we got a problem. Close to the ground, for the most part, we're below freezing. This is at, by the way, you can see over my head, this is the forecast from the model I just showed you, the one that's much more aggressive with a changeover to some rainfall. This is what it says the atmosphere will look like above our heads in Huntsville at noon on Friday. Again, close to the ground, we're just above freezing. That's that 34 degrees. The dew point's indicated in the green line, by the way. That's 32. Just above the surface, and what you want to follow is this dashed blue line that we have here. That's basically 0 degrees. So this is kind of showing us how the temperature changes as we go up in height, and focused around that 0 degree number, which is 0 degrees Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit. And you do see just above the ground, we're a little bit below that. So we're below freezing, just above the surface, maybe a couple degrees above freezing at ground level. And we stay below freezing for a little bit until we hit this layer of the atmosphere where it goes slightly above freezing. Why is that problematic? Well, a lot of the precip generation is going to be up here. So a lot of what we are going to see precip-wise, it's going to be falling from the clouds as snow. And then it's going to hit this warm layer where the temperature is above 32. So what's going to happen? Snowflakes are going to melt. And then it's going to come down here and it gets a little closer to the ground and it's below 32. So those melted snowflakes, maybe little slushy snowflakes, start to freeze back up. A couple things can happen here. If they do refreeze, that's when you get sleet, little ice balls. And again, sleet kind of bounces when it hits. If it stays liquid and it comes down and we actually have a temperature of 32 or below, and that's when you get freezing rain or that glaze. So what I want to point out to you here is it's so close. It is so close. The warmest that we get here in this warmer layer above freezing is probably 34 degrees. That's it. But that makes a world of difference. If it's not 32, the water is not going to be frozen. It's going to be water. So that makes the difference. That little layer there is our whole problem. And we've been seeing this showing up in the data for the last couple days. Now, if this is off a little bit, a little colder, you know what? We're all snow. We're good to go if that's what you want. If this ends up even warmer than what we have here, we're all rainfall, and we're not going to get any accumulation of snow or ice. All right, so what do I think is going to happen? I do believe that we are going to have a period of some snowfall out of this, and that's going to be early in the game. So the question is, how long does it stay snow? And therefore, how much can accumulate? So this is what I got going right now. I reserve the right to change my mind if new data comes on in. And that's what we do. We're constantly looking at the new stuff and fine-tuning the forecast based on that. Primarily all snow, southern middle Tennessee, maybe out here towards the shoals, 3 to 5 inches before we get any sort of transition to a wintry mix or any rainfall coming on in. A little bit to the south, I think we have a better chance of a wintry mix, but there is likely to be several hours of light snow that we will get out of this. And depending on how heavily it comes down, maybe 2 to 4 inches, Russellville, Moulton, Athens, Decatur, the Huntsville area, over to Scottsboro. And then in the purple color here, near the Tennessee River, points southward and then around I-65 and eastward, probably not going to have the opportunity to see snow add up a whole lot, maybe up to 2 inches before it does transition. And we're also going to have to watch for the ice accumulation. And this will be sleet and or freezing rain. And the freezing rain part is quite problematic because if we get that causes a lot of issues. Right now in this area, perhaps 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice. And that could be sleet, that could be freezing rain, just kind of grouping all that together. So if you're wanting to see all snow, southern Tennessee is the place to go. If we are lucky and things kind of work out the way that I think they will, we will at least get some snow accumulation in the Huntsville area, Scottsboro, Athens, Decatur, Moulton, before we start to bring in the wintry mess. Southern parts of the area, don't blink, it will not be there long, but you may also see a little bit of accumulation before all this changes over. So it's complicated. Now, regardless, they're going to be, the impacts I think are going to be the same. Travel. You know how it goes here. Yes, they've pre-treated the roads. I mean, let's be honest. Has there ever been a winter weather event where the roads were pre-treated that we did not have travel impacts? I mean, it might help very early on, but it's not, particularly in this sort of situation where we are going to have, you know, a full 12 hours plus of precip. Eventually that pre-treating stuff is going to go away and the roads are going to ice up, particularly heading into Friday night. We will get below freezing. Any moisture, any slush, any snow on the roads is going to turn into ice heading into Friday night. So travel impacts are going to be quite high into the first half of the weekend. We'll likely begin to see some a bit more substantial melting by Sunday, but I don't think we'll see much melting through Saturday at least. Cold temperatures, barely above freezing, high impact for that. And again, we have to watch the frozen precip. The sleet's usually not the problem. It's the freezing rain, which is the glaze. Basically, the rain falls and then freezes on whatever it touches. And then that ice, the weight of it, eventually builds up to the point that you get your tree limbs coming down, you get your power lines coming down, you get the tree limbs falling on the power lines. And that's when you have big problems. So we are going to have to watch for that, where we do perhaps see some freezing rain where power outages could be a problem. So, I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. And hopefully I've answered a lot of questions, and I know we still have some, and a lot of you are going to know, well, what's it going to do exactly where I am? You know, I got the estimates here, and honestly, that's the best I can do. We can look at the data, we can say this is what the math and the physics say the atmosphere should do based on that information. But ultimately, the atmosphere is going to do what it's going to do. And here in the South, you know, it is so difficult to pinpoint winter weather. And I mean, when I lived here before, it was disappointing. Other places I've lived, difficult forecast when it comes to winter weather. And you live in a place where it's usually warm most of the year. Now, I grew up in Ohio. Usually it's not a difficult forecast there. It's going to snow just because Ohio's a cold place. All right, let me check in here. Just check some of the comments. And again, I hope I've shared the most information that I can to answer your questions, but let me take a look and see what we got here. I'll check my page first, maybe, if it'll come up. And they're not, so let's just do this. Some people, let's see, let's check the comments. If you bear with me, I'm having a little problem pulling up. Okay, there we go. There we go. Comments were not wanting to load for a second. I got Stuart checking in from Leeton in Colbert County. Hey, Stuart. Let's see. Do have a few questions about amounts. I'll put those back up here in just a second. Martha likes the tie. Yeah, I wore this today. It's either going to will the snow into existence or it's going to kill any chance. I don't think there's going to be an in-between. I say that jokingly. I don't get to wear this tie very often, so, or at least not when snow is in the forecast around here. So lots of people commenting on the tie. And let's see, just some hellos. Some folks from my previous stomping grounds in the Arklatex checking in. Hello to all of you. Back in the Shreveport area, I know you folks are dealing with it in Shreveport as well, especially north. Although I was looking at the weather there earlier and I saw it was like 33, 34 in Shreveport and raining. So you're right there on the edge as well, and in the Shreveport-Bossier area for seeing the difference between a wintry mess and just a very, very cold rain. Let me check here on the Way 31 Facebook page. As we are also simulcasting the live right now. Oh, got quite a few more comments here. So let me see what I can run through. And again, for specific amounts, again, having trouble with the comments not wanting to load there. Here we go. Maybe it just takes a couple tries. I'll run back through the expectations again. And know that we will get some new information in between now and 10 o'clock, and I'll be making any adjustments as I can. Looks like a lot of people just checking in. I know our web folks always like to see where everyone's checking in from. So quite a few. Stephanie saying, hope no power outages or water issues. Yes, absolutely. We do not want that. I mean, it's bad enough with snow and ice. We don't want people to not have heat either or running water. Folks that still follow me from Shreveport know that was an issue a few years back when we had a big winter weather event there. Power outages and problems with water lines breaking because of the cold. Let's see. So mostly people just checking in. So that's good. If people are just checking in, not asking a lot of questions, that means I've answered a lot for everyone. Yeah, just mostly people checking in as I'm kind of skimming through here. Someone said, want to build a snowman. I will say, the snow that we are expecting to get will be a heavy, wet snow. So that will be absolutely perfect for building snowmen and for snowball fights. So it's not going to be like that powdery, dry snow that you just can't get to compact. So this will be good for that. Matt says, loosen the tie and roll up the sleeves. That's when you know it's getting real. This is just snow, though. This is not high-impact, severe weather. Let's see, just mostly people checking in. So, all right. So let me go back here. we'll wrap things up. Again, this is my forecast as it stands now. I'll show you a couple model solutions, snowfall-wise, and some ice-wise, and then we'll wrap things up. So again, I think our best chance for seeing some higher accumulations, and for here, 3 to 5 inches of snow. I mean, that's a lot. You know, my family up in Ohio, a big snow for them is 10 plus inches. But here, you know, you get up to 5 inches of snow, that's a big deal. Best chance for that, southern middle Tennessee, maybe a little bit of the shoals. By the time we hit Russellville, again, Moulton, Athens, Decatur, Huntsville to Scottsboro, 2 to 4 inches will be an average. And keep in mind within this, I'll say an average of 2 to 4. There could be some spots where it is a little bit heavier. Sometimes that can happen on some of the higher ridge tops here, Jackson County in particular. And a similar story here where I've got the lower totals, 2 inches or less in the purple color for areas south of Decatur, Morgan County, Coleman County, Marshall County, that includes the Grant area. I know someone's asked specifically about Grant over towards Fort Payne. Again, 2 inches approximately, but maybe a little bit more if the period of snow lasts a bit longer than what we're expecting. And again, we'll have to keep an eye, especially here south of the Tennessee River, for that possibility for upwards of 1/4 of an inch of ice if we end up seeing freezing rain as opposed to sleet. Sleet will actually kind of contribute to the snow totals. The freezing rain, obviously a whole different ball game. But let me see here. I think I've got, there we go. So these are some raw numbers for snowfall. This is the European model, which we've used up until the last day or so. And then we start getting into the models that are a little more fine scale, a little more high definition, high resolution. But this is still saying, you know, 3, 4, 5 inches of snow across the area, lower totals as you head to the southeast corner. This is a little more aggressive on snowfall. And I will say this model and another one that I'm going to show you, not picking up on that transition to a wintry mix. So that's why you're going to see these numbers running a little bit higher than some others. This is also one of those models that, again, is lower resolution. And this has some pretty wild numbers up here. Southern Tennessee, 7 to 9 inches. So just throwing this out, again, this is the raw model data, which is a little different than what I'm forecasting. And also keep in mind, when I show you this model data, and when you see it anywhere, that's potential snowfall. That's how much falls. That's not how much sticks. It's not how much it compresses when it's on the ground. This is just, okay, this is falling out of the sky. This is how much space we expect it to take up. And so therefore this is an estimate. But again, it's just what falls, doesn't count what melts upon impact, doesn't take into account that sometimes as the snow comes down, particularly it's a heavy snow, it will compact under its own weight. So this is not snow depth. This is just how much falls from the sky. And again, this model, a similar story, again, showing heavier totals, southern Tennessee, lower totals to the south. But again, even this is a little heavy on snowfall compared to what I think it is going to be. And if that model that I showed you, that model information, the temperature profile, again, if it's colder, very well, yes, that could happen. But right now, I'm just not thinking that that will be the case. This is a little more realistic in terms of totals, showing 4, 5, 6 inches here, mostly in the north, and then 2 to 3 in the south, a little closer to what I've been showing. But again, this model is also less aggressive when it comes to seeing that changeover to either that wintry mix or the liquid precip. Last thing I'll show you is potential icing. And again, this is kind of what we have in the forecast for potential for 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. I've been on for 30 minutes. Appreciate you all that have taken the time to watch. I know there's a big football game on with the college football playoff this evening. So again, hopefully I've answered your questions. Again, I will have new information. I'll get into this much more detailed as well coming up in your forecast on Way 31 News tonight at 10 o'clock. You can look here on social media, also on the YouTube channel if you're watching us live stream there for the latest details. We'll be doing a lot of updates tomorrow, a lot of live content throughout the day, letting you know what's happening. We've got our reporters are going to be out in the field reporting what they're seeing in their particular location. So we've got you covered through this event, whatever it is that Mother Nature ends up throwing at us. I'm going to be up here. I may be back in here not too long after the 10 o'clock news because I want to make sure that I can get home and get situated, maybe get a few hours of sleep, but also be able to get back up to the station before road conditions deteriorate too much. Download the Way 31 Storm Tracker weather app, updates there. You can also track out the snowfall, see where the snow and the ice and maybe some rainfall even is relative to your location. So lots of tools where you can keep up with the latest details. And of course, we're going to be here watching it as well. All right, again, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. But again, if you tune in tonight, Way 31 News at 10 o'clock, I'll have the very newest information that comes in between now and then here in the next 90 minutes. Hope you have a great rest of your evening.